Welcome, everyone, to the Weekly Wrangle, where we go beyond the software to help you succeed as a CGI artist. Today's topic is exploring whether or not you should consider a side hustle. In my opinion, it's not very obvious whether or not the answer is yes or no. It really depends on why you're doing a side hustle and whether or not it's really necessary. So we'll talk about that today, and we'll look at both good and bad reasons why you should do a side hustle and good and bad reasons for not doing a side hustle. Now, right off the bat, I'll say that for most people, I believe that a side hustle can be a good thing. I don't think enough people are taking side hustles or pursuing them in a way that could really benefit their main hustle. That being said, when I look back at my trajectory, I've done both things. When CG Forge started, I was doing all kinds of side hustles. I was doing photography, graphic design. I was doing DoorDash. That became a main staple for a few months. I was playing music and occasionally making a little bit of money from there. I was also doing CG Forge. I was freelancing for studios around Nashville. I had all kinds of different sources of income happening at the same time. Eventually, however, I decided to abandon all of those side hustles and focus strictly on CG Forge. So there is a point where it makes sense to drop the side hustle, but in the meantime, especially as you're starting out, I think side hustles can be a really great thing. Being totally honest here, in the CGI community, I don't think that enough people respect and consider a side hustle versus other artists like musicians, like fine artists, like really anything else, actors, actresses. I think that in other artistic pursuits, people are way more open and accepting and pursuant of the side hustle as a way of succeeding in their main craft. Whereas in CGI and in VFX and everything, I do see people expect that they study the subject for, 3 or 4 years, they get a job. And anything that disrupts that straight line means that you're messing up, means that you're off track, I think, in many people's minds. Or it means, I think, for some people, that you are a failure because you worked really hard and you got nowhere for it. And so naturally, that brings us to reasons why you should consider a side hustle. Reason number one, money. It takes the pressure off of your main hustle to make you money right away. And by doing that, it allows your main craft to be uninhibited by that stress. So if you can imagine, your main goal is to create a demo reel and to get a job as a VFX artist. Obviously, that's not going to make money right away, not money that you can live off of. So when you put a gun up to the head of your dreams of being a VFX artist and it needs to make you money now, you can imagine that's not only stressful to you, but it's also going to hamper your success because you're not going to be patient in learning things properly, and you're going to try to find any shortcut to success that you possibly can. And those shortcuts often don't serve you best in the long run. So as an example, in my opinion, it's not great to take every single gig that comes your way. But if you're desperate, you will. You may get underpaid. You may get screwed over. You may get burnt out. You may quit. I've had a whole other rants about that topic recently. But the bottom line is that because you had a gun up to the head of your dreams and hopes and aspirations to make money right away, you forgoed the time and the space to learn in a relaxed, comfortable way that would have made you a better artist and ultimately would have led to better opportunities had you just taken everything down a notch and studied things properly. So that could be one example of why a side hustle is great. It removes the stress of the gun up against the head because you have something else take care of the money to get you by for now. That's what I did when I started CG Forge. It wasn't making enough money. I had to pay $400 in rent because I was living with 5 other roommates in a big old house in Antioch, Tennessee, which is about 40 minutes south of Nashville. I was living in that house, paying $400. I needed gas money and food. That was my bottom line. That's what I needed the side hustle for. And that worked when I was doing DoorDash and I had, a graphic design gig show up or a studio gig show up here and there. And it took care of my needs and it got rid of the stress for CG Forge to, perform and support my whole life right away. If it wasn't for the side hustle, CG Forge wouldn't even exist. Now, another good reason for starting a side hustle is that it can create positive momentum for you. Because if you find success in the side hustle, that's naturally going to spill over to success in your main hustle as well. So, when you get that satisfaction of paying the $400 a month in rent, that's cool. Makes you feel good. Makes you feel like you got this, like your aspirations are possible. If you didn't have a side hustle and you're just focusing for 5 years or 6 years on only your main craft and only getting nowhere and have nothing to show for it, it's easy to get negative because you haven't had those moments of success. And so having the side hustle gives you that fuel of success, and energetically that just spills over to everything else you're doing in life. Let's not forget that many of you aspire to be an artist. And what makes an artist interesting is their perspectives on culture, on reality, on the world around us. And those perspectives often come from people that have lived different experiences and don't have this monoculture of life experiences to pull from. So, yeah, if you want to be a more interesting artist, live a more interesting life. That's basically what I'm saying. And a side hustle can help you do that. Now, those are some good reasons for starting a side hustle. What are some bad reasons for starting a side hustle? When shouldn't you do this? Well, in my opinion, you shouldn't do that when you just want to procrastinate on your main hustle. A lot of people, they don't want to get down to business. They don't want to suffer and they don't want to do the things they don't want to do in their main craft for a moment of time. So they want to distract themselves with something else. And that by itself isn't really a good reason to start a side hustle. There are times where you just have to rough it out, do the things you don't want to do, toughen up a little bit, and get past that moment of time in your main hustle and move on with growing things from there. That can happen. Another reason why it may not be good for you to start a side hustle is if you believe that working harder makes you a better person. Fun fact, it doesn't. And I think many of us like to buy into this fantasy that it does. So as an example, if I work really hard and I'm doing 70, 80 hours of hustle a week, especially I would say this is a fairly American mindset. I think a lot of Americans feel like they are a better person, feel like they are a more successful person if they just work really, really hard. But that's not true. People work really, really hard and they're bad people. People work really, really hard and they're still losers. It happens. It's unfortunate, maybe in reality that it works that way, but by itself, hard work is not a virtue. And so, in my opinion, yeah, it doesn't make you a better person for working harder. And if you subconsciously believe that it does, you can just be working and not really optimizing and working smart in a way that makes the most of your time for your main pursuits. And again, I just want to clarify, I'm saying that working hard by itself, with no other context, doesn't make someone automatically a good person. If you're working hard for good reasons, that could make you a good person, but it's for the reasons, not for the work itself. That's what I'm saying. Now, another reason why people pursue a side hustle is because they've given up on their main hustle. And really, this is just a way of coping with that. They don't really want to say no to their main hustle. So instead, they just want to kind of do a side hustle to let this linger on in their life and not really give a yes or a no for their main pursuit. That's also not good. That gets you stuck in limbo. And what I mean by that is if you are burnt out in VFX, or if you do not want to do this anymore, say yes or say no. Don't say maybe and start a side hustle and just let your main hustle kind of rot at the vine for many years. That's not the best thing to do. That's the most painful way of letting your main dreams fail. And so that's why, in my opinion, the side hustle can be that crutch for the negativity you have elsewhere. And if that's the case, you're better off not doing a side hustle. You're better off just saying no to the thing you want to say no to and pursuing something else as your main hustle. The analogy I would give to this would be like the musician who ends up being 50 years old and still playing in dive bars trying to make it big one day. It's just depressing. It's not good. All those side hustles that enable this life are just not good for anyone, including the musician, especially the musician that's doing this. I've seen that with some people. It's not a good thing. And if that's you, pick something else in life that's going to help you feel more satisfied and fulfilled in your efforts. Now, those are good and bad reasons for saying yes to a side hustle. If you want to say no to a side hustle, there are good and bad reasons for that too. So, what are good reasons for saying no to a side hustle? Well, reason number one, in my opinion, is that side hustles take time. And that time could be better spent in your main pursuit if that is possible for you. So, I got to a point in my life where I didn't have to do a side hustle anymore because CG Forge had grown enough to take care of my base needs. And at that point, I said, I'm not spending any more time than I have to on DoorDash. I'm not spending this time doing album artwork for this one artist or doing a photo shoot over here for this other thing. I'm starting to say no to gigs because I want to keep focus and keep all of my time dedicated towards my main pursuits. And so having focus is about saying no. If your side hustle has gotten you to a point where you can say no, then sometimes it's worth dropping the side hustle and just doing the main thing you want to do. And that would be a good reason for saying no to a side hustle. Along those lines, you need to make sure that your side hustle is actually a side hustle. And that goes back to time. Are you spending more time on the side hustles or more time on your main pursuits? And is that entirely necessary? Often it's not. By definition, a side hustle should be something you do on the side, something that's secondary. But if it's the main thing that you do, then it's really not acting as a side hustle in your life. Your main thing in life is doing side hustles, and that can be detrimental to your hopes and dreams if that's what you prioritize more. So when it comes to that, saying no to a side hustle could be a good thing if that side hustle is just too consuming for what you're trying to do. If it's too consuming on your time, on your mental state, on whatever it might be, it can burn you out and that can hurt your main pursuit as well. So you also don't want to find something like that. Now, last thing here, what are bad reasons for saying no to a side hustle? For many people, it's because they're too lazy. They don't want to do it. It's a lot of effort. It takes time. It's not comfortable. There's going to be some excuse, right? There's going to be some kind of thing I can tell myself to make me feel like I'm still a good person. But at the end of the day, you're just lazy. Now, that's a bad reason for saying no to a side hustle. Another bad reason for saying no to a side hustle is if you subconsciously want to fail because you want to get the positive attention for trying and failing. This one's a little weird, but I do find that some people are doing this, even if they don't realize it. I think that these days there is a small minority of people out there who want to be praised for trying. And they want the attention for having the tragic story that catches everyone's ears and then has everyone flooding them with positive comments about how good they are for trying, how it's all okay, and how, oh, it just happens to the best of us, and just all this kind of positive sort of mopey support that happens primarily on Reddit, usually. But yeah, I mean, in a way, that is a bad reason for saying no to a side hustle, because at the end of the day, what they're really seeking is failure so that they can get positive attention. It's a weird one, like I said. I don't think that most people fall into this category, but there are people out there that do, so I think it's worth saying. Another bad reason for not doing a side hustle is if you're too prideful. If you think that you are above a side hustle, if you think that doing DoorDash and delivering pizzas makes you a lower class or something like that than other people. If that's your mindset, if you feel like you are leveling down by taking a side hustle because of your pride, I feel like that's just not thinking critically about the situation and not realizing stupidly that your side hustles can be the conduit of success, not a result of your failure. And I think that's there's a lot of people that fall into this category as well. They're too prideful to do it. They're too prideful to take that side job for a moment, even if it's temporary, because their vision of themselves will be taken down a peg. If that really matters to you, then I would say stop being so weak and become stronger and more humble for the sake of your craft, for the sake of you succeeding more. I think a lot of people don't succeed because they're not willing to be humbled to any degree whatsoever. And that is a bad reason for not taking a side gig as well. So let's now take a step back real quickly. I know this is a long video, but hopefully this is interesting. And I just want to talk about some of the key takeaways here and general advice I have when it comes to a side hustle and how to make the most of it. So point number one, make sure that your side hustle is something that you understand. Like, take a second, think about why you're doing this, have a good reason for doing a side hustle. Don't just run into a side hustle without any plan. I think it's best to do that because it makes you more self-aware of why you're doing this. And it also lets you know when it's time to say no to the side hustle. So that's reason number one, have a reason. Number two, double dip if you can, because many side hustles are going to help you build skills that are fairly adjacent to what your main pursuit is. As an example, one of my side hustles was photography. Many of the skills I have in lighting and look dev and just, comp and being able to make a nice image comes from my practice in photography. And the skills, the instincts, the artistic eye for composition, all of that stuff can double dip with my main pursuit. And so if you find a side hustle that does that, that's amazing. That's great. That's ideal. And that makes it so that you're still making some progress and it's not entirely separate from your main pursuit. The last piece of advice I'll have is make sure that your side hustle is actually a side hustle. Don't let it overshadow your main pursuits as much as you can. And also just make sure that you're living in a modest way if you are taking up a side hustle for the sake of money. So if you can get more roommates and live a more down-to-earth lifestyle, if you can trade in your new car for a used one, if you can take your bills down to as low of a monthly payment as you possibly can, if you can stop spending any sort of expenses on credit cards and building debts and increasing your monthly payments, anything you can do to be scrappy and getting by makes a side hustle more and more helpful and possible to actually do good in your life. So live modestly. If you're someone who's doing a side hustle for the money, that allows you to move on from the side hustle sooner than later and hopefully find success in the main pursuit that you have. That's what I think about side hustles. More importantly, what do you think about side hustles? Let me know in the comments. As always, you can find information at CG Forge on wrangles that'll help you succeed as a CGI artist, as well as hard skills on how to learn Houdini. That's really the main thing CG Forge does. It provides the best education for getting started with Houdini and improving your craft. Until next time, thanks for watching and have a great day.